Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome to Big Country Politics. This is our Sunday conversation. I'm Manny Diaz. This week we are joined by Chance Ferguson. He is a candidate for District 19 U.S. Congress. Chance, thanks so much for taking time out for us today. You're running for Congress. We'll get into that. First and foremost, for folks that may not know you, because there's a good chance that people not just in Abilene will see this, but up in Lubbock, certainly around the district. Tell us, who is Chance Ferguson?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me this morning. I appreciate it. I was born and raised in Merkel, Texas, so I'm kind of a hometown boy here in Abilene, and I graduated from high school at Friendship up in Lubbock. After I served in the United States Marine Corps, I came back to Abilene, and I did over 20 years as a Deputy United States Marshal and was the Deputy U.S. Marshal in charge here in Abilene and covered 28 counties.
Wow. So you were kind of in the thick of things at times.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A little bit. I've actually done 3 years in Alpine as well on the Mexican border, and have a lot of experience working with the immigration officers and stuff there and in Abilene.
Interesting. We'll get into that here in a bit. Well, tell us, why are you running for Congress? I mean, there's the incumbent here, you can say he has a ton of experience. There's there's also a few other candidates that are looking to challenge Jody Arrington here. Why are you running for Congress?
You know, for me, just on a personal level, after serving in the Marine Corps and serving this country as a Deputy U.S. Marshal, honestly, I just couldn't sit back and watch what is happening to this country any longer. In my opinion, it's time to hit the reset button and start all over and get everybody voted out, get new people in, because they can't work together. They can't work across party lines. They can't work within their own party to accomplish the things that we need to get done in this country. And just as a patriot and, you know, as a prior service member, I just could not sit back and watch it anymore.
There's a lot, you know, when we see, you know, the Democrats and Republicans sprinkled in with the independent or two in there. And you're saying that, you know, they're not able to work with each other. How can you enter that conversation and certainly enhance that?
Well, and that's kind of the bad thing. And that's one thing that I've told a lot of people. Electing one person to office is not going to make a big difference. We've got to start putting knowledgeable candidates in office who have firsthand real world experience about the problems we face. We've got to start putting people in office who know what they're talking about and they've lived it. As a military veteran, you know, myself, I've got 2 sons that serve in the Marines. I know what the military needs. I know what the families are needing and their support. As a 20-plus year law enforcement officer, I have the experience to know what it takes for our law enforcement officers out there. I'm an active shooter instructor. I've dealt with that situation multiple times. I've worked on the border with immigration, HSI. I was on DEA HIDTA task force. I've dealt with all of the problems that are dealing with our country right now. And like I said, just electing one person is not going to cut it. We need every person to get out and vote. And we need to start making a difference and putting godly people back in our Congress.
You're technically, I guess, you can be considered somewhat of an outsider, you know, despite being a member of, being a U.S. Marshal in the political realm. You know, that's probably how they would see you there. But on the other hand, Mr. 45, you know, he was an outsider and made his way inside there. Tell me, how can someone like you, how do you feel that you can kind of come, if elected, that you can really kind of, you know, change the landscape of things without really being in the political hemisphere?
Well, I think I bring a fresh breath of air to politics. I have no desire to be a politician. I want to be your representative. I want to be your voice in Washington, D.C. And I think that that's what we've gotten away from so long, is we no longer have a voice. You know, personally down here, and I talk to people all the time that have no idea who their representative is. I'll say, well, your representative is Jody Arrington. They say, I've never heard of him, never seen him, never talked to him. But during an election year, it seems like you hear more from him. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, you're getting emails and you're getting text messages, and he's showing up at nursing homes and takes some pictures. But other than that, you don't hear from him. Abilene area especially needs a representative that's going to represent both areas and not just the northern side of this district. And so I think by coming in, I can bring a new face to it who wants to be your representative and not a politician. And I think that's one reason that President Trump was so successful, is he was not a politician, and he came in and he could see what was right for the country and not what was right for his own pocketbook and his bank account.
Interesting. Alrighty. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, more with Chance Ferguson, candidate for District 19 U.S. Congress, right here on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Welcome back to Big Country Politics. This is our Sunday conversation. This week our special guest is Chance Ferguson. He is running for District 19 U.S. Congress. It represents us here in Abilene in the Big Country, and certainly up in the Lubbock in the South Plains area. Chance, you are a longtime U.S. Marshal. You're a retired U.S. Marshal. You were a U.S. Marshal for over 20 years.
Yes, sir.
You're also a member of the United States Marine Corps, so definitely appreciate your service. Thank you for your service. You know, Jody Arrington has stressed fiscal sanity. Vance Boyd has shed light on rural health care. Is there a policy or policies that have inspired you to run for Congress?
Oh, there's so many of them. Our country has so many issues right now that need to be addressed. I think fiscal responsibility is a key topic. Personally, working for the government for nearly 30 years, I have seen so much waste and abuse in our federal government. We don't recognize any agencies for giving money back at the end of the year, so they all spend their fiscal budget. They could turn this money back in, but they don't. They blow every single dime of it so that they can ensure that they get that much or more the next year. And it's a huge waste, and it's basically fraud. But it goes all the way down to income tax. One of my positions is to move away from an income tax and move to a federal sales tax. We've got 13 million illegal aliens in this country that don't pay a dime into our tax system unless they're in Texas and pay to our state sales system, because it is a sales tax based system. So illegal aliens, drug runners, even the rich and the wealthy, when we've got 17,000 pages of tax reform law that you have to deal with, and there's loophole after loophole and after loophole. Joe Biden's calling for 85,000 enforcement agents for the IRS. If we move to a federal sales base, we don't need all that. And it'll be much like paying your taxes here in the state of Texas. When you purchase something, you just paid your taxes. And I think that it would be, everybody would be contributing their fair share. Social Security, the VA, there are so many things that just need to be revamped right now.
You mentioned, as a U.S. Marshal, kind of working along the border and what have you there. Governor Abbott has recently signed a bill that would make illegal immigration a state crime in the state of Texas. What is your stance on the border and the governor's approach regarding illegal immigration?
I think it's outstanding. As a Deputy United States Marshal, there's certain things that we could do and we could not do. For instance, you couldn't just walk up to somebody and ask them to see their immigration papers. You have to have probable cause that they were here illegally and that they committed a crime. But the problem is the state and locals had no teeth to, they could do things such as the human trafficking side and things like that. But Governor Abbott's bill has now given our state and local law enforcement the teeth that they need to protect our state. Our government's not doing it in Washington, D.C. They're letting them come in by the thousands. They could be sanctioning Mexico and telling Mexico that Mexico's going to start helping the problem. They're not going to let them cross their entire country and come to our border without any reprimand. And by Governor Abbott stepping up and doing this, by Governor Abbott stepping up and putting people on buses and shipping them to Washington, D.C. and places like that, I thought that was amazing. And it kind of made some people open their eyes in the other parts of this country.
With this district, District 19, it includes the South Plains of Lubbock, and there's a lot of agriculture in that area. Not to say that there's not any here in Abilene in the Big Country, but it's more relevant up there. Tell me, what could you do for the person in that involving agriculture? How do you intend to relate to the person up there in the Lubbock area? What can you do for them? Because you're going to have to, in order to win this district, you're going to have to win a good chunk of Lubbock in that particular area.
Absolutely. And farming and ranching has been in my family for generations. I grew up in Merkel, Texas, like I said, and it's a very small farming community, agricultural community just outside of Abilene. I now live on the farm that my great-grandparents bought in 1908, just south of Abilene. And my whole family has been in, not my immediate family, but I have aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff that are ranchers and farmers. And, you know, I used to break and train horses and I rodeoed. And the farmers and the ranchers up in, well, not just the northern part, I mean, there's plenty of them down here, will most definitely get my support. I'm very pro-agriculture. But what they need to understand is you can't give with one hand and then take away with the other and say, well, look what I'm doing over here. It's got to be on both sides. So, for instance, Mr. Arrington just voted on a bill to microchip livestock. So I don't see how that benefits a farmer and rancher personally. It's going to cost them more money because now they're going to have to pay this fee to microchip livestock. So it's a give and take. And so when you're giving with one hand, but then you vote to change the name of Fort Hood and it cost us millions of dollars, what good did it do over here if I'm giving you this, but I'm taking away from you over here? Mm-hmm. So it's all encompassing. It's not, I don't believe you can narrow it down to one topic and say you're just good for farmers and ranchers, or you're just good for the agriculture, or you're just good for the military, the law enforcement. It's got to be all encompassing, and you've got to represent everybody in your district.
Last question, and I'll kind of give you the floor here in 20 or 30 seconds or so. Why should voters here in District 19, Abilene in the Big Country, the South Plains and the Lubbock area, why should they take a chance on you?
Well, as I've said, and I've said it multiple times to multiple people, we continue to elect people to represent us who have no real world experience in the problems that we're facing. Myself, I've been on the border. I've worked hand in hand. I've worked with the Mexican officials and the comandantes and the AFIs. I've worked with Border Patrol, HSI. I was on the DEA HIDTA task force. I've worked with local, state law enforcement. I've worked with the Texas Rangers on major cases. I was in the military. I know what the military needs and know what their families need for their support. You know, for instance, we're number 3 in the world right now on military, and we only grow by a margin of 3% every year, while our enemies are getting stronger and stronger. In the last couple of years, we've had a 5.2 reduction in defense spending. You know, that is going the total opposite direction we need to. I'm all for not spending money on the federal government side, but not at the cost of our defense. Mm-hmm. So by electing me, you're going to get someone into office who has real world experience, knows what he's talking about when these problems arise. And I'm not just going to go up there and vote the way that people have funded my campaign, have asked me to vote. You know, I've raised less than $5,000. I don't owe anybody anything. When I'm going against an incumbent that's already raised $1.4 million, you have to ask yourself, whose pocket is he in? I mean, he's going to owe somebody for those votes.
Chance, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Like I said, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All righty. For Chance Ferguson, candidate for District 19 U.S. Congress, I am Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday Conversation. We'll see you next time. God bless.